Hey everyone, welcome to the unscripted part of my Scripted Unscripted podcast. My name is Nadia, and today I'm going to chat with thought leaders and all-around cool people about their quest to live a fulfilling life. Each unscripted episode relates back to the scripted one, so make sure you tune into both. I am so excited to have in the studio with us Tala Arakji. She is someone I'm a huge fan of, not just as a person and a writer and as a mom, but all those things put together. Let me tell you a little bit about Tala before we get into our conversation. She's Leb-American, just like me. She lives in Dubai. She used to be this like big hot shot in advertising and then completely changed her life to be the writer that she was meant to be. She studied at the New York Film Academy in New York. She went to Fade In with me, trained under me in Fade In, my workshop-based boutique academy in Beirut. And then she was selected for the super prestigious Middle East Media Initiative in Los Angeles in 2021. Then, and I kid you not, this really happened. She sold her very first show. It got funding from a media fund in the MENA region, and then it was picked up by a leading platform, and then she's been developing it since, and it's super, super exciting. And that is Tala. Tala, welcome to my little baby podcast.
Hi, Nadia. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm really excited to have you, and I'm really excited to jump into these questions because I want to know how, what, why, everything.
Yeah, I'm here for it. You tell me.
Okay, Tala, let's get right to it. My first question has to do with what your life was like when you had a very demanding, very full-time job in advertising, which I remember you do love it. You did love it. It's not that you didn't love it, but you also wanted to take care of your creative self. And so I wanted to know from you, can you give us some details or some insights on how you were able to take care of your creative self while you had no time at all because of this demanding job?
So first of all, I want to say that this was my life before I had a kid, before I was a mom. So I had the space to do some stuff that was for me. And I guess it comes back to this thing that I really believe in. If you want something for yourself, you have to make the space for it. If you want to become something or you want to learn a trait or something like that, you need to do it on your own time and you need to make it happen. And I guess that what also helped is my husband was addicted to Call of Duty at that time. So it gave me the space to kind of, do my own thing. But I would wake up at 5 a.m. before going to the office to get in some pages. I'd go to the gym, then go to the office, and then I'd set my boundaries of when I needed to leave the office, which was something I needed to work on because I think I used to give work more time than it actually deserved. Then I'd come home and I, spend some time with my husband and I'd spend the evening writing. And I had my show. I was really focused on like a specific goal at that time. And I think sometimes when you have these goals, it allows you to have a certain drive forward. And that's the way I did it. And I lived this double life for quite some time and I loved it. I look back at it, I was like, wow, I was my ultimate self then.
Oh, that's interesting. I've read a lot of writers when they're starting out, they need money, obviously. And so they have a job, but they call any kind of writing that they're doing their second job. And they're just as serious about it. And even though nobody's paying them for it, it's as if someone's paying them for it. And that's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like you were going to work before your job and then going to work after your job. And so you had two jobs.
That's what it felt like. And I would get so much joy out of it in those early stages when the contracts weren't there and I was still writing for myself. It was just, the pressure, I guess, wasn't as high. So the stakes were not as high. And so it was really the joy of writing, the joy of having this time and space to create.
They also say that every writer wants to make writing a job, but when it becomes a job, when you get paid for it, when somebody buys your work, they miss the time when they're just sitting at home writing for themselves. It's like we're never satisfied.
100%. Like when you're getting paid for it, all of a sudden, it's not good enough, and you question yourself.
You have other people, yes,
Exactly.
Other people to take care of.
So then my follow-up question for you is, you're doing these two jobs, you're loving it, there's a lot of joy in the creative process. At the same time, you have this really demanding advertising job, which is great for you as well, not just for money. I know that you enjoyed it as well. So then for me, my next question would be, what made you decide to quit advertising altogether?
Well, I think the joy out of advertising was diminishing. And like, I think I was starting to see the ugly sides of it. And it just didn't fulfill my creative need at all. I wasn't part of the creative side of advertising. I was in strategy. So although there is some creative elements to it and a lot of research, but it just wasn't the same. And I felt like I had something to say to the world through my writing and through my shows. And I kind of wanted to let that out. And I said to myself, like, if I don't give myself the space for this to actually try to write and try to make this a career, it will never happen just as a side gig, the way I was trying to push through in the early stages. And happily, I had like this break. So I got, once I had a baby, I had that kind of space, and I had that thought, I knew like, okay, once I have a baby, there's this priority that I have that's very different than everything else in this world. So I want to focus the rest of my energy on something else that I absolutely love, which is writing. And so I had the support from my family and everything to quit my extremely high-paying job to earning peanuts now.
To make nothing. Oh, that's so interesting, because it feels like having a baby it didn't keep you at your job. It did the opposite. It sort of inspired you to follow your dream. Is that fair to say?
That's exactly what happened. I thought I was going back after my mat leave. Like, my office was waiting for me. And then suddenly, into 1 month into my mat leave, I like called my boss. I'm like, you were right. Because he always called it. I love this guy. He called it. He's like, you're never coming back. I'm like, you're right. I'm not coming back. Because he knew that I was writing, and he knew I had this passion on the side, and he knew the person that I am. Like, I just would want to give my kid everything. And I just feel like writing is also, it's a better balance of momhood life. Like, being a mom gives me as a writer, as well as writing and thinking about the world in that kind of objective way, makes me a better parent. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It makes absolute sense. At the same time, you did have two jobs in the early phases, and you still have two jobs, except now one of them is, the intense and challenging and joyful job of being a mom. It's not advertising, but it is a big, big, big job, which is very demanding on time and energy. And then you decided that the other job would continue to be writing, which is so cool. And I love what you're saying, because you said that one feeds into the other. And that's my next question for you, because and you kind of just said it, but can you be more specific about that? So I'm just curious, as a mom myself, so some things happened to me creatively, but for you, what happened to you creatively when you became a mom? What happened to your writing? Maybe is it writing style? Is it just the way that you approach writing, or is it just a different kind of lifestyle shift that helped you?
I would say at first the writing stopped because like the momming was too much. I felt like maybe all the creativity, because in the beginning, when this infant is so small, I feel like you give everything to them. And unlike the boundaries I could set in advertising, there are no boundaries in this new job of mine. It's a 24/7 job that is so demanding, and there's like emotional roller coasters and big feelings. On both ends, yeah? It's not just my big feelings, the little one's big feelings.
No, they're so tiny then, and they take up the most space.
Exactly. So I'd say the writing stopped in the beginning. The creativity was gone. Then the nights were sleepless. Let's be realistic.
I remember.
But then somehow life comes back, and there's like a bit of a flow and an energy and a rhythm to things. And you get this little person, and this little person now gets you a little bit more. And she understands now mama is working, so she'll leave the room. And I feel like just the magic of watching somebody see the world for the first time, and like the curiosity they have, it just allows and inspires you to write in a very different way. And I feel like I'm so much, I was already a super emotional person, but like I'm now more emotionally in tune with the world and the people around me because of having a kid. And so I think that really heightens my writing, my writing style.
And that's definitely essential for storytelling. This like being in tune with the world and or creativity in general, regardless of what you use it for. This kind of intuition or observation or looking at the world in this way. And you're absolutely right. I think kids do that. I've never really put it that way, but it makes perfect sense. You're helping me articulate some of the things that also happened to me after having a baby. Other thing, it's so funny. It's twofold. Like, yes, you have a lot of time and energy spent and emotions and part of the energy on raising a child or being with the child and all of this. And it's funny because it feels like it's supposed to just deplete you. But when you work in a creative field or when you have a project or a goal, as you said before, it's really helpful to have a project in mind, regardless of how long that project might take you, depending on what it is that you're doing in life. Somehow that time and energy and all that stuff that you're doing with your kid feeds into it, which is so cool. It's definitely a blessing.
Exactly.
My next question for you, this is something that's come up for me and always comes up. I always shift this, but some things stay with me forever, and some things are new. So I wanted to know what kind of creative habits do you have to this day? And maybe ones you had in your other life. I know we have different seasons of life, and different phases and different times, and so in your previous life, what are some things that stayed with you until today, or if you picked up any new habits, creative habits that you have?
Okay. So I think like the structured creative habits that I had in my other life of like journaling have gone out the window, which is very unfortunate for me. But a new habit that I have now is to feel like even a sentence on my iPhone notes is enough. Or like if I have a thought, I like put it down. Somehow my super scattered brain brings it together when I'm back in front of the screen or in front of a page, and it comes together. Yeah, I would say that's probably it. And this is super therapeutic for me, but I know, don't mom shame me. I still put my kid to bed in my arms. But that moment, but that moment, like when I'm in that dark room with the sound machine on and on a rocking chair with my child, and like I kind of enter a zen thought, and whatever project I'm working at, somehow I have these epiphanies when I'm like doing that.
Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So like I'm like sitting there rocking her to sleep, and if there's a project on my mind or a problem in a scene or something, somehow I have this epiphany during that moment, and then I get to go and write it because I get back into writing after she's asleep.
Oh, that's funny because it's you're putting yourself into hypnosis. And
I think so, perhaps.
Yeah, definitely. No, they say, a lot of writers talk about this, different kinds of writers, and they talk about how in the shower they get their ideas, or while they're driving, and you're talking about this sound machine and rocking.
Yeah.
So all of those are things that lull your brain into this kind of unconscious state where subconscious state where your subconscious comes up with these solutions that you've been thinking about. That is funny.
It's like funny. A dark room too. It's ridiculous. Every single time I'm in a writing problem, that's like when I come up with a solution, or if I'm like trying to find a way to start a scene, or those difficult moments in writing, that's when I have a solution for them.
That is funny. So non-moms out there, just get a rocking chair, purchase a sound machine.
Actually, for me, now that you mentioned it, this happens to me when I'm sleepless. Like this kind of epiphanies happen to me when I stay up and I'm sleepless, and somehow my inhibitions, the fly is here.
Yeah.
Don't feel any
need to kill it.
Yeah. No, it's fine. Do your thing. We're She just killed a fly before recording.
Aywa.
But, anyway, it's one of the mom.
Yeah. When your kid gets like these huge mosquito bite inflammations, you're like, gotta be on the prowl all the time.
Oh yeah, I'm a
See how
mosquito
she likes
killer. I'm a mosquito killer. I'm a ninja.
I still don't have that.
Oh, I have it.
Maybe
You
when
will
I'm
not
older.
wake up my son. Okay? You will not wake him up. I will kill you.
Basically. But yeah, I was saying,
Yes.
my inhibitions, I don't know if that's the right word to say. So a lot of times when you're supposed to write and you're like actively squeezing your brain to come up with like a plot or a solution to some gap in your writing, when I'm like really sleepless and like I look somewhere else is where I kind of let loose and have that epiphany. So I'm glad like it kind of takes different like it manifests differently for you as moms. And this is also inspiring to me because we're always like, I'm always thinking about motherhood. Like I'm always thinking of motherhood as a challenge to the creative process. Like, and we had conversations, me and Nadia, about like, I look at it as this point in time that is like time freezes, and like this is a chapter that is going to be only dedicated for the child. So now I have to do everything before I take on that
I
journey.
definitely had that when I was pregnant. I remember going to my echography, my sonogram. What do you call it? When you take
What do you mean?
when you take pictures?
Ultrasound.
Thank you. I remember going to the ultrasound or having them hook me up to monitor the baby's heart, and I was like, "Do you have a table? You know, the kind that you put on the hospital bed where you eat there?" And I was like, "Thank you." And I was writing on my computer as they were monitoring the baby's heart for 45 minutes. So I had that feeling. I was like, oh, I got to get everything done. I was writing up to the day I was in labor, so I could hand in projects. Same with Tala, yeah. And it was, you're right, Hind. It was a total surprise that actually, it's funny. Not only, it's just another phase of life. It's not, you learn how to work it in, but it's odd because some of the nice things are you are kinder to yourself. You somehow understand that you can't do everything, but at the same time, what you are doing is enough. So I think Tala just mentioned it where she says, okay, well, now I write one sentence on my notes app and I'm like, yay, way to go. Whereas maybe in my previous lives, I was like, what am I doing? I'm not writing. And then I would be meaner to myself and then it would take me longer even to get going. So yeah, definitely. But your instinct or your thought, because it seems counterintuitive to say, oh yeah, when I have a kid, I'll just keep writing. So you're totally right. That's exactly what happened to all of us, which was I got to get everything done before the baby comes. So yeah, it was like a happy surprise.
But life does change. Like I hope I'm not sugarcoating it too much.
That's true.
Time becomes harder to find, and that's something. Like you learn to be a little bit more productive when you do have the space to write. You learn to make most of what you do have. And there's some days when you just have to you had a horrible toddler day that took out all your energy and all you're going to get is a sentence or two, and that's okay. But life doesn't stop. Life comes in seasons. And as women, like having that chance to become mothers, it's really life altering and paradigm shifting. And I think it heightens your creativity if you allow it to.
I love that.
Yeah, if your eyes are open, if your heart is open, yeah, definitely. No, definitely, I agree. Yeah, I've been telling you about habits of other writers, and I read a lot of. I don't know. I'm sure Tala does as well, and you too, Hind. But I read a lot of books about writing, written by writers. So, Hind, you said something about before you fall asleep. And Tala saying about, the sound machine and all that and putting your brain into hypnosis. One of my favorite writers, her name is Margaret Atwood. She wrote a book on writing. Very nerdy book. Do I have it right here? What's it called? Yes, I do. It's called Negotiating with the Dead. And she talks a little bit about what happened to her when she first started writing or when she first published her first poetry book. And she's a novelist. She's a crazy, crazy, awesome novelist. She wrote The Handmaid's Tale. And so everyone knows that because of the TV show. But she's got just a range of these amazing, amazing novels. She said that writing sometimes is like when she does her crosswords, where she's focusing on this clue and she's just like, she can't find the answer to this one clue and she's like beating herself up over it and she's trying really hard. And she says sometimes she just has to walk away from the crossword. And for some reason, when she comes back, she knows the answer. And that's kind of reminding me of what you were saying, Hind, which is like when you walk away from it, you come back to it somehow there. Or when you allow yourself not to think about it, you find the answers. So I find that really interesting. I'm always like picking out people's creative processes. And another book I'm reading, which I'm by accident citing while we're talking, is 101 Habits of Successful Screenwriters. It's really fun. It's not your typical book on writing. It's just a bunch of screenwriters who are like mega successful, but they tell you about their habits. And a lot of them talk about this. It's like, yes, I go on a long drive. You know, Tala Sound Machine? They create that. They're like, they drive. There's one, maybe not great for the environment, but there's this one writer who just drives for like 3 hours a day, just driving because that's where apparently he gets his ideas. And so he creates that. And they are working writers, which means they work 9 to 5 or whatever it might be on the writing. So they use some of that time to do some crazy, weird stuff. Another one said that they shower. I'm like, let's just take another shower. Like 3 showers a day.
Fifth one of the day.
Yeah, exactly. An idea. 5th one of the day. So I find this conversation really, really interesting. And then how it's adjusted to having a kid. And what do I do with my kid to get that creativity out? Cool. So I have one last question. And this one also, by the way, you guys, that was Hind, my producer. Tala is a working screenwriter. Hind is a working everything. She writes films, she produces those films, she directs those films, she wins awards like left and right. She talks me off a ledge when I am doing this podcast and telling her it's not any good. She tells me it is. Not only that, she helps me out all the time with my own creative process and reminds me of it. So that's Hind, you guys. That's my producer. And so Hind and I wanted to ask you this question, Tala, because we both struggle with it, have struggled with it. So here it is. How do you protect yourself from total burnout? If you are in every season of our lives, we have 2.5 jobs or between 2 and 4 jobs. I mean, and some that are not jobs that pay us money. How do you do? How?
I think that, okay, I'm going to do it again in the phases, right? Mom phase and non-mom phase. Pre-momhood, I would, I think the gym was an outlet for me. And
movement.
Movement. But I also think that I was very like, go, go, go. And I would, like push through.
Yeah.
At that stage. I think at this point in this season of my life, I don't have the ability to push through anymore. And burnout is a real deal because the physical exhaustion that comes with raising a child is different than the like mental masturbation of advertising. It's
I love how she phrased
it. It's really draining and emotionally draining, and you need your emotions to be intact when you're writing and being creative. And with advertising, like I was known to be like this cool cucumber, client killed your work. Oh, whatever. They'll take the next one. Like it never got to me. I learned to, work is work and it's fine. And everyone has their prerogative and we just go with the flow. But in life of momhood, it gets to you. Am I a good mom? Am I a bad mom? And all this guilt tripping and your kid is sick. And then it's like, oh no, we go to the ER for like a cough, that first cough.
I remember that. Yes.
So it's so sad, but yeah, you're exhausted. And that's when I think like I have to walk away from the work because nothing I produce when I'm that exhausted or try to push through is any good. And I still work on how to protect myself. Really, like for a phase, there was yoga that was helping me. Now I can't seem to squeeze that in with nursery drop off. So I'm still working on what it means to save yourself from burnout. Over the past 2 months, when the world is going up in flames, I decided it's not time for me to write. It's okay. And that's okay. Things will wait. There will always be opportunities. And so it's just knowing when to pause and give some space to you, because I know that when I'm that stretched or I'm emotionally unavailable, nothing will come out of it. And I have that privilege because I'm not on a paid job right now. I think like when you're on a paid job with a deadline, life is harder. And I don't have an answer for that. I'll look to you, Nadia, to give me advice on what to do with those moments.
I know exactly what you're saying. I think what I do is then, like you said, I think it's really important to manage your expectations of yourself. So when you're emotionally drained, and you're expected to produce, if you're doing it just for yourself, you say, okay, I'm going to put this aside. And sometimes that works for you. It's like a blessing in disguise, even though you feel horrible. It's a blessing in disguise because, like we were saying, it's something you walk away from. So when you do come back to the table, all of these things have been figured out without you even realizing. And when it is a paid job, I usually try to, like you said, do as much as I can. And then if my deadline is in the future, I can see it, but it's like a little bit further off, a little bit down the line, and I am struggling. I communicate with the people who asked for that deadline. I try to be honest with them, and this is how I battle burnout, which is, hey, I'm having some trouble. I know you're used to me being on time. How much time can you give me extra? And if they really can't, I'm like, okay, just so you, then I'm honest with them. Okay, so you might be getting something less than my best, but it will be something that we can work on. Or, I try to communicate with them so that I don't push myself so hard, or I don't push myself into a burnout. And that's when it is a paying job and I do have deadlines. And Hind and I talk about that all the time too, to try to remember how much can you take on, how much can you put on your plate. When do you say no to other things then? Being a mom, especially, Tala, and Hind is not a mom right now, but she also has family responsibilities. And so I've also learned, and I think this comes with being a mom, no, I'm not going to this family outing, or not because I don't want to. I really want to. And I love you guys, but I'm trying not to burn out and I need a break. I can't shovel our clothes on and get the diaper change and do all this stuff and I'm tired. I want to just sit there, and just sitting there doing nothing it's hard to say no to people, but then I try. I know during these phases where I know that I'm close to burnout emotionally or physically, I try.
I'm guilty of this, and this is why when I heard your podcast, as we were working on the podcast, discussing it, and now also hearing you, I just feel like that transition into motherhood kind of forced you to kind of savor the time spent doing, wearing the different hats that you have. So you want to be fully present with your child. And then you do that. So what I'm not maybe doing a great job at right now is that I'm in this point where I'm like, yeah, I can push through, or I feel like I can push myself a little bit more and go to that outing with the family, So I think this is a good reminder that it's good to start practicing every once in a while to set these boundaries.
100%. I am guilty of it. Before being a mom, I didn't do it. And I wish I had. Yeah. I mean, I think people, I've heard the word thrown around that I was a workaholic, or that I was like doing too much, or that I was doing yes to everything. We got friends, we got family, we got work, we got house, we got husband, we got everything. I mean, you're right, Hind. I wish I had, but it took having a child to push me to be cool.
Yeah. You realize how valuable your energy is, and you think, is this going to just take and not give back, or is this also going to give back? So yeah, you spend quality time with your kid. It's very exhausting, but it also gives you so much. And then you think going to see these people for dinner at a fancy restaurant that I'm going to have to pay so much. Is this going to give me, or is this just going to take from me? and those Dubai outings. So
Of course.
I'm like, oh, goodbye social life. This is my new me.
Yeah. Also, by the way, like this conversation kind of reminded me of something I read somewhere about how women are actually, if we compare women to men, we're actually cyclical beings, or females, let me just say females, that they're cyclical beings. And there's a lot of people who actually, on the holistic side, they tell you how because we're cyclical beings and we have seasons and we're affected by the moon, if you believe in that, and our hormones. So there are times in the month where you're actually, like, for example, if I'm getting my period, I feel like I need to rest. But I always, like, because of the machine that is corporate, we kind of make it hard to accept that, and we push. So I feel like motherhood also helps you in listening to your body.
Yeah.
And tuning in. You mentioned it, and I find it very interesting, actually.
It's super true. And I've been reading some stuff also about like working out, the different types of workouts you should have along your cycle. And it's like all these years we've been playing the game to the corporate world, to like the rules that the males have set out. And you're like, oh, just that doesn't work for us. And I guess like that, going back to writing, now my paradigm has shifted to kind of think like, okay, it's okay if I can't produce right now, or if I listen to myself. It's just, I don't have it in me right now. And I just kind of like listen to my body and the energy and my creativity as it flows through the time. But again, when you're on a paid job, when you're part of the corporate cycle, how could you do that? For me, I was just thinking back, like I've had to do this before. I try to put a lot of like music. I try to change my energy, my mood. I don't know if you listen to music when you write, Nadia, or do you hint? But for me, sometimes it helps me get into a mood, and then maybe I'll silence it while I'm like really focusing, or keep it in the background but lower it. But I need to hype myself up.
Oh, definitely. I loved, so when Tala was writing her amazing show as the head writer, so as the leader of the team, I was lucky enough to be consulting on that show. She sent me a playlist to listen to while I was thinking about the show, and that was so cool. I loved that. And then some writers do that for me. I'm not like that. I don't do music because it distracts me. It worked with you because you somehow knew. I don't know how. It's so amazing. You just knew how to make the playlist not distract me, but sort of like enter my brain as I was thinking of the show, and it became like a soundtrack that would inspire me to understand the show in a different way. Often, and I've heard other writers say this too, I put on music that can drown into the background and it initiates something. There's great stuff on a bunch of apps or whatever where it's called just a writing mix and it's instrumental. It cannot be music that I know. Like God forbid I should start singing. Because then I'm not writing, I'm singing. and if something I really love or something I'm really comfortable with and I just sing, I'm just singing. But if you've ever been in my writers' rooms, I do have dance breaks. So we do song of the day or like song of the week, and we just like dance it out. Sometimes it's good for movement and brain stuff. Yeah.
Speaking of instrumentals, so I actually listen to music, and I even when I direct actually, so it's also in my writing process and also in my direction, where I would send a cast a specific playlist that resonates with the character to put them in the mood. And I do that for me on my passive creative process when I'm doing life. So, and my husband would be like looking at me like, Hind, why are you listening to this sometimes it's dark, and it's very like emotional. And he's like, why are you listening to this in the morning as you get ready? And I'm like, trust me, I'm working on something. And then we fight over who controls the car, music list. He wins most of the times, but sometimes I threaten him. But yeah, like when I'm writing, I can not listen to something with lyrics because I end up singing. And then I started listening to foreign music, like Spanish, for example.
Yeah, that helps.
But then I learned Spanish. And I'm like, wow, I'm so good at like picking up, foreign language. Like it's a thing. So I start singing in Spanish. So I'm like, okay, never mind. Just instrumentals for now.
Yeah.
For sure.
Ambient music. M83.
Ambient music. That's right. That's right. So, ladies, I've very much enjoyed this conversation. And I want to say, as I collect more and more habits of successful women and successful writers and successful people in general, I collect their habits because they're so interesting for the creative process. So this was really awesome for me. And I wanted to thank Tala for being with us today.
This podcast is brought to you by CMS, yours truly, Nadia Tabara, and of course, my beautiful and lovely producer, Hindan Abdawi. Thank you so much for listening to my unscripted conversations, and make sure you listen to the scripted part too. It's after all called Scripted Unscripted. So anyway, thank you so much. Bye.